Chapter 10. An Atrocious Act. The month after learning he was a traveler, Kye spent every chance he got practicing his affinity and using all of Helia as his playground. All he had to do was form a clear picture of where he wanted to go, whisper the word, and bam, he was there. And the longer he was traveling, the easier it got. Kye could zip between continents just as easily as if he were stepping through a doorway. He returned to the Isle of Isolde often to watch the waves crashing against the shore. He toured the luminescent forests of Mura, seeing the plants practically glow in the dead of night. He stood on the cliffs of Novar, looking out and watching the sunrise that painted the eastern continent of Iselia in colors and light. It was a wonderful feeling, a freedom the likes of which he had never known. Arden generally encouraged Kye's travels, however, he did impose some rules as well. He warned Kye of places to avoid, even within Iselia, that would not be kind to humans. And he made Kye promise to never try to portal between realms himself. Kye did finally slow down his excursions, though, when one day he appeared in the tower unexpectedly and collided with Arden as he had just fixed himself a drink. The whiskey tumbled to the floor and shattered as Arden let out a long sigh. He waved his hand and cleaned up the glass as he went back to fix another drink. "While I'm glad you're having fun with your affinity, kid, I feel the need to remind you stairs were invented for a reason." Kye nodded and muttered, "Sorry." He made a mental note to himself from then on to show more caution when suddenly appearing in the tower. "Are there other travelers at Caelum Vallis?" Kye asked. He knew that each mage connected to an area of magic, and he was interested to know if there were mages that connected to the same school of study as him. Arden paused for a moment. "There are some. Maester Eyston and Maester Bari are travelers. I think I heard of a few acolytes that possess the ability as well. All in all, I think there are about 10 in the castle with the affinity." "That's it?" Kye asked, surprised. There were slightly over 200 maesters on the High Council. Acolytes accounted for almost 200 more. It was shocking to him to hear that of that number, there were only 10 whose affinity lay in teleportation magic, himself included. Arden nodded. "It's not a terribly common affinity, mainly because it involves being able to paint a detailed image in your mind and requires a great amount of focus. And far as I know, none of them can teleport based on pictures. Only memories." Arden looked up from his glass and gave Kye an impressed smile. "You certainly have a gift, no doubt about that." Kye was stunned. Something so second nature to him was so difficult for others. Perhaps it was because he spent so much time growing up envisioning other places, or maybe it was because humans were the only race that dreamed. Maybe that had something to do with it. Creating worlds inside your mind while you slept made it easier to picture places while you woke. Either way, Kye felt fortunate to be a traveler and honored to be gifted in any area of study related to magic. For the first time since he had arrived, he started to believe he might actually belong. "So, it's like being charmed?" Saiyah asked. "Sort of," Kye replied, "but it's your own mind charming you." "Does it take great focus?" Saiyah inquired. "No. It just sort of happens." "And this happens every night?" "Well, not necessarily." As the clock ticked past midnight, Kye and Saiyah sat at their usual table in the library. What had initially been a relationship fueled by animosity had now blossomed into friendship. Each night they would meet to study, discuss spells, share stories, and learn more about each other. Kye had come to realize that Saiyah was not the snobby highborn mage he'd first thought her to be. In fact, she was brilliant, compassionate, and honorable. He had also learned that even though she looked to be in her early 20s, she was actually about 125 years old, though elves did not tend to keep track of their age. He had come to find out she was a speaker whose affinity lay in summoning, preferred huckleberry root tea, and was born in the winter. In return, Saiyah had discovered much about Kye as well. She now knew he was 18 years old, born in the fall, had a deep love for books, and that he was a traveler. The more she talked to him, the more she saw how mistaken the whole castle had been about him. He was not some brute, unhinged or otherwise. He was, in fact, kind-hearted, rational, and intelligent. Saiyah also came to know the truth about Umbri, who had been painted to be a noble maester by much of the council. Kye did not speak about his life with Umbri much, but the few stories that Saiyah had been able to get him to tell her taught Saiyah one definite truth. Umbri had not been kind. Honestly, from hearing Kye's side, she couldn't say for certain she wouldn't have stabbed the wretch as well. What she had learned about Kye showed an entirely different side of humanity than what Saiyah had been led to believe. As such, she found herself asking more questions about him and humans in general. As they sat in the quiet library this particular night, the rain was hammering down on the windows as they both sat in the glow of the fire, sipping cups of tea amongst volumes of books spread out on the table. Kye was trying his best, and failing honestly, to describe dreaming, an experience unique to humans. "And you find dreaming enjoyable?" Saiyah inquired. "Generally. I mean, unless it's a nightmare." "What is a nightmare?" Essentially, your inner fears manifest to torment you in your dreams," Kye described. Saiyah stared back in disbelief. "That sounds horrific," Kye shrugged. "It's not really pleasant, no." "Why would anyone choose to have a nightmare?" "Well, you don't really have a choice." "You have no control at all?" "No, I mean, if you realize it's a dream, you have control, but you don't always know that." "Why do you not know that?" "Because you think it's real?" "I thought it wasn't real." "No, it's not, but it can seem that way." Kye paused at Saiyah's puzzled expression before letting out a long sigh. I'm not describing this well, am I?" he smiled. Saiyah chuckled. "It seems as though it's something one must experience to fully comprehend. Or at least find a human better at the explanation." "What sort of things do you usually dream about?" "Mostly places I want to see, and sometimes Helia." "Do you miss your home?" "I miss part of it. The sun, for sure. It's a bit colder here, to be honest." "And what about your family? I'm certain you miss them as well." Kye stopped for a moment, seemingly caught off guard by the question. "I don't really have any family left there," he finally replied. "None at all?" Saiyah pressed. "What about your parents?" Kye shifted slightly in his chair. "My father died when I was 2. My mother passed when I was 13. "I'm so sorry. How did it happen?" Kye ran a hand through his hair and cleared his throat a bit. My father was a quarryman, killed in a rockslide. And my mother, she passed from an illness. At least, that's what I was told." "You were told? But you weren't there?" No," Kye admitted, focusing on the book in front of him. "I was sold to Umbri when I was 8. I hadn't seen her in 5 years." Saiyah sat in a state of shock. She had no idea humans were treated so deplorably. Then again, she had never tried to find out. She had just taken all the stories told to be true. Humans were useless, little better than animals, whose only purpose was servitude. At least that was what all the mages she had spoken to had conveyed. But it was all lies. Kye had been taken from his family when he was still a child, to serve a cruel mage and literally never see his mother again? He had risked his life to save another and act worthy of the High Council, and for the price of such a courageous deed, he waited little better than a death sentence should he ever try to return home, and animosity from his fellow mages should he remain. Saiyah felt a surge of anger on his behalf. He didn't deserve this. No human did. "What about your family?" Kye inquired, swiftly changing the subject from himself. It was clear Saiyah had broached a topic he didn't discuss often.
"Oh, well, my parents are both silversmiths. Our shop has been in our family for generations. Also, we have had one mage in our family serving on the council for several generations. As it turns out, I was the only one amongst my siblings that displayed the gift, so naturally, I was selected to join."
"Did you want to join the council?" Kye asked. Saiyah sat quietly for a moment, turning over the question in her mind. In truth, no one had ever asked her that, not even her own family. Her joining the council had always been a given since she displayed the gift. Her wants hadn't factored into it. It was all to carry on the family honor. That was why she studied so hard, why she was so determined in her craft. But that wasn't the only reason, was it? It made her think long and hard about her response. Kye tilted his head slightly, waiting for her reply.
Well,
Saiyah began.
I've always had a fascination with magic, and I do enjoy helping others, so yes, I did want to join the council.
Kye smiled back at her. Are your siblings disappointed they didn't possess the gift?
Oh, I doubt it. They're far too wrapped up in their own lives to concern themselves with magic.
How many siblings do you have? Kye asked as he reached for his tea.
12.
Kye froze mid-sip as his eyes widened. You have 12 siblings?
7 brothers, 5 sisters,
Saiyah replied.
I'm the youngest.
Wow! That sounds crowded. Saiyah laughed.
Yes, it is remarkable how I feel I have more space trapped in a castle with 400 mages.
Kye laughed back as Saiyah smiled and reached for her own tea. Out of the corner of her eye, something caught her attention. Kye noticed Saiyah's face fall as she looked at something disapprovingly. As Kye followed her gaze, he noticed that a red-headed female goblin had entered the library. At first, she stared at them in shock, but quickly turned her nose up in disgust and stalked out of the library. Kye was confused. The note of disgust directed at him would have been nothing out of the ordinary, but the goblin's disdain seemed to have been directly pointed at Saiyah. Saiyah went quiet after she departed. Was she a friend of yours? Kye inquired.
There was a time I may have thought so, but I can now say, with absolute certainty, no.
The way Saiyah answered the question made Kye curious about something he felt compelled to ask. Saiyah, did something happen between you and the other acolytes? Saiyah seemed to tense a bit at the question.
What makes you say that?
You weren't in the library every night until a little over a month ago. And she seemed angry at you. I was just wondering if you... Just then, an event shot forward in Kye's memory. He let out a deflated sigh. He knew what this was about. Because of me, Kye clarified, now understanding. Because you stood up to Thaden and Valor for me? Saiyah remained silent, simply turning a page of her own book. Kye felt guilty. Even though the altercation was not his fault, he felt responsible that Saiyah was now being ostracized because of it. He knew all too well how that felt. Saiyah, Kye stated. I'm sorry if...
Why?
Saiyah shot back at him immediately.
Why should you apologize when you have done absolutely nothing for which to apologize for?
Kye gave a small smile as Saiyah turned back to her book. Her eyes narrowed in a contentious glare as she added,
Thaden, however, would need a lifetime of atonement. I refuse to associate with those who have no honor or ethics. I just hadn't realized how many members of Caelum Vallis were lacking those qualities until now, for which I am grateful.
Saiyah sat a little taller in her seat as she stated,
Besides, the library is much too crowded and noisy during the day. I prefer the ambiance at night much more, and the company is certainly better.
Saiyah declared matter-of-factly. Kye smiled back at her. Couldn't agree more. It was a calm afternoon in Arden's tower. Kye was lying on the sofa near the fire, reading a non-spell book for once. It was an elven literary author Saiyah had recommended, though honestly, Kye wasn't getting the full story. He had gained a basic understanding of Elvish from Arden, but it was clearly lacking. Arden was seated in his high-backed chair. He had just pulled out his pipe, filling the end with his favorite herb, in preparation to light it. For fuck's sake. Kye looked over to him just in time to see Arden's amulet stop glowing and his eyes open in a very perturbed expression. Is it the council? Kye inquired. Arden nodded. Vala has called an emergency session. For what? His desperate need to feel important, Arden growled as Kye chuckled. I'll be back in a while, Arden added as he grabbed his cloak and disappeared from the tower. When Arden returned to the tower later that evening, Kye was enjoying the last remnants of a pot roast Celeste had sent up, along with a cup of tea. How was the council meeting? Kye inquired as he set his cup down. You and Valor come to blows? He added with a sarcastic grin as he turned to face Arden. But one look at his master's face caused all humor to subside instantly. Arden looked ragged, solemn, and defeated. It was the first time Kye had seen him so downtrodden. Arden walked over to the bar and instantly poured himself a drink. He took a seat in the armchair by the fire, rubbing his temples and staring out the large veranda doors as he sipped the whiskey and let out a stressed, heavy sigh. He seemed to be avoiding Kye's gaze, as though he was uncertain how to begin the conversation. "What happened?" Kye inquired, causing Arden to finally meet his eyes. Arden gestured at the couch in front of him. "Have a seat." Kye complied, feeling anxiety swelling up within him at his master's serious tone. "The council got word. There was an attack on Helia." Kye felt his stomach drop as Arden continued. "It is believed that it was Oren's doing. He seemed to focus the attack on a place called Camrys. Do you know of it?" Kye nodded, somewhat numbly. "It's a slave town, made up of freed slaves and elderly. They have no arms and they are no threat. Why would Oren attack them?" Arden shook his head. "I don't know. That is why I volunteered to go investigate." Kye became fixated on the floor, his mind slowly comprehending what Arden was saying. His thoughts immediately shot to Jatar. Kye hoped he and his family got out all right. "Do you know how many survivors?" Kye asked. His question met with silence. Kye snapped his head back up as Arden began. "We've only gotten second-hand reports. Until I actually investigate, there's no way to be—" "Arden," Kye interrupted in a more serious tone. "How many survivors?" He desperately wanted Arden to give a positive response. The truth hit Kye like an avalanche as Arden simply responded, "As far as we know, none." Kye's mind couldn't seem to comprehend. Camrys had been a large town, the largest slave town on Helia. For every citizen to be killed did not seem possible. "How many dead?" Kye asked, not really wanting to know the number, but feeling compelled to understand. "We don't have an exact count, but from what the council heard, a little over 800. Arden's words seemed to be far off, even though he was seated right in front of him. The number of people dead seemed incalculable to Kye, a number too large to process. Humans had never been treated well by mages, so a death here and there was not unheard of, but mass genocide on such a scale? No mage had ever displayed such brutality against humankind before. As such, one question kept repeating in Kye's mind over and over again. Why? He turned back to Arden, desperate for an answer. "Did the attack have to do with the stone? Was this a form of retaliation?" Arden shook his head. "I don't know, but believe me, I intend to find out." "I'll come with you," Kye declared as he stood up. Arden let out a long sigh. "Kye," he started to argue. "I can help," Kye retorted. "I grew up on Helia. Not to mention, you're an elf and a mage. If there are survivors, they'll be wary of talking to you. I'm human. They'll trust me." Arden held up a hand to stop the argument before giving Kye a sympathetic look. "I get it, kid. I do," Arden began. "You're hurt, and you're pissed, and you have every right to be. But Helia isn't safe for you under normal circumstances, and certainly not if Oren is targeting humans." Kye looked away, wanting to argue but knowing that Arden was right. Forget the fact that there was undoubtedly a bounty on Kye's head for attacking Umbri. He was still new to the craft. If they did happen to run into Oren while on Helia, Kye would be helpless against him, and in all likelihood, he could get Arden killed in his defense. Arden stood up and placed a hand on Kye's shoulder. He gave a comforting look as he said, "What I know, you will know. I'll keep you informed, I promise." Kye closed his eyes and nodded back reluctantly. Satisfied with their agreement, Arden collected a satchel from his room upstairs as he began moving throughout the tower, filling it with vials of potions and magic tomes. "I'll be gone a few days," Arden stated to Kye. "Don't go traveling through Iselia while I'm away. Stay within the bounds of the castle." "I will," Kye promised. The last thing Arden grabbed was the scrying spinner before tying up the satchel and grabbing for his cloak. "I'll give you an update soon," Arden promised as he opened the tower door. "Until then, try to focus on your studies and try not to dwell." Kye thought that was easier said than done, but he nodded nonetheless. With that, Arden left as Kye stood alone in the middle of the common area for a long time. He was lost in thought, thinking of nothing but cameras. He thought of Jatar, his family, and all the people living there, trying to make a life of their own. Having been indebted to mages their whole lives before finally finding some measure of freedom for themselves, hurting no one. And then for a mage to come along and slaughter them, without mercy, without cause? Kye's fingers felt numb until he looked down and realized his hands had been clenched into tight fists. For the first time in his life, Kye felt his rage outweigh all reason. Arden had attacked his kin because he believed he had no reason to fear humans, but Kye swore, no matter what, he would give him one. Kye's breathing was coarse, and the tower common room suddenly felt very small. Arden was right. He needed to focus on something else other than his fury. And he needed some air. After wandering the grounds of the castle for a few hours, Kye found himself walking by the lake. The sky was cloudless, showing off the glimmering stars above him as a bright harvest moon cast a light glow. He desperately wanted to travel, get some distance from the castle, but he had promised Arden he wouldn't. Instead, he was turning over the events in his head, pacing in the frigid night air. He kept envisioning the village, the people, their lives, and their final moments. How scared they must have been, trying to fight back against an enemy they had no chance of defeating. Kye finally took a seat on a tree stump by the water. He felt a hard knot form in his chest. Humans didn't deserve this. Kye? A sudden voice in his head caused Kye to jump in surprise. He looked around. He was alone by the lake, but someone had just said his name, hadn't they? Kye! The voice stated again, only this time, Kye recognized it. He looked down to see his amulet was glowing. Someone was communicating with him. Kye closed his eyes and focused. Saiyah? He asked the voice in his mind. Yes, Saiyah replied. I was looking for you. Where are you? By the lake, Kye responded before opening his eyes again. Within moments, Saiyah appeared a few feet from him. There you are, Saiyah stated as she approached Kye. I thought you might be in the library. I was surprised to find you weren't. Kye nodded as he turned his attention toward the sky above him. I just needed some air. Saiyah gazed at the frost-covered grass around them and the wisps of steam that escaped Kye's lips with each breath. Do humans not feel the cold? She asked curiously. No, we do. I'm just ignoring it. Saiyah doubted that mind over matter would be enough to keep him from catching his death. She held out her palm toward the ground and whispered a spell under her breath. A small fire ignited in front of them, casting a warm glow and radiating heat. Kye's tense posture immediately relaxed as he leaned closer to the fire, savoring its warmth. He gave a small smile to Saiyah. Thanks, he murmured gratefully. Saiyah returned his smile and settled herself on a rock near the water opposite him. In the flickering light of the flame, she could now clearly see the sorrow and pain etched on Kye's face. I heard from Maester Llewell about Helia, she began cautiously. Kye's expression darkened at the mention of his home realm. Kye? I'm so sorry. Kye nodded silently, his gaze still fixated on the stars above. I also heard it was Arden. Does Arden or the council know why? Saiyah pressed gently. Kye's tone turned bitter as he replied, I'm sure he had many reasons why, the simplest one being that he could. As Kye fell silent again, Saiyah turned her attention to a nearby patch of earth. She didn't know what to say. She wasn't sure if Kye wanted to talk or be left alone, if he trusted her enough to consider her a confidant or still saw her as a stranger. But she also knew she couldn't just leave him by himself when he was clearly upset. To her surprise, Kye was the first to break the silence. It's strange, he began. Before Arden, I always hated mages, but more than that, I feared them. The wrath Umbri would often unleash, no matter how hard I stood my ground or tried to fight back, I was powerless against it. I hated that feeling more than anything. He paused for a moment, before continuing. When Arden offered me a chance to be a mage, I thought that I could finally gain the strength to fight back. That I could use that power to help other humans. But despite all that I have learned, how far I have come, it's not enough. Even by mage standards, I'm still weak in comparison. Incapable of helping my own kind. Incapable of even helping Arden. Saiyah furrowed her brows.
Is that how you see yourself? As weak?
Kye did not respond to her question, which told Saiyah the answer was yes. Saiyah huffed loudly.
Well, then you truly are a fool,
she snapped. Kye raised his eyebrows and turned toward her, taken aback by her rather loud proclamation.
You have made remarkable progress in such a short time,
Saiyah continued.
You have shown a determination that 100 mages could not match. You fought on equal footing with an elven acolyte, proven yourself a remarkable traveler, and changed the minds of some of the most stubborn mages in the process, myself included.
Kye gave her a small smile.
You are not weak, Kye, but you're also not all-powerful. Even the greatest mages in the world cannot save all who suffer and would go mad trying. We are not gods.
Kye nodded. Arden said the same thing to me when we first met.
Sound advice you should take to heart.
Kye looked back to the sky. I was not able to save them, he said. But at least I can avenge them. They weren't able to fight, but I can, and I will. I will see Arden pay for what he has done.
To take on one of the most powerful mages of our age will not be an easy endeavor,
Saiyah stated. Never meant to be a cobbled road, Kye muttered. Saiyah tilted her head slightly, unsure of the meaning behind the saying. She assumed it was a human motto she was unfamiliar with. Saiyah took a deep breath and proclaimed,
Well, in that case, allow me to assist you in your endeavor. I should like to take a shot at that black-hearted beast myself.
I could think of no better ally, Kye stated sincerely.
Then it's settled. But it is not a small task we undertake, and for it we will need to be well prepared, and well rested.
Is that your subtle way of telling me I should sleep? Kye asked with a grin.
Oh dear, was I being subtle?
Kye chuckled. Point taken. I'll head in shortly. Saiyah nodded.
Then I shall meet you in the library tomorrow. We can begin our research and form a battle plan for how we stop Arden. Till then, I will leave you to your thoughts.
Saiyah rose from the rocks and started heading back toward the castle. Saiyah, she turned as Kye smiled at her. Thank you.
Of course,
she replied as she smiled back at him.
What are friends for?
Kye appeared in Arden's tower sometime later. He immediately placed himself in front of the fire. Noting the chain of his amulet felt like ice, he put it on the armoire as he warmed himself. He was partially frozen and still angry, but he felt better after talking with Saiyah. He now had a new focus, a purpose. Both Arden and Umbri had caused so much pain, and Kye would help return it in kind. On the dining table, Kye noticed a cup of tea and some biscuits. He smiled. Celeste must have brought it up for him. Considering how cold he was, the tea seemed the perfect remedy. Kye sat down at the table to drink it. As he sipped the warm liquid, he was turning over the events in his mind. The attack on Helia had to be linked to the Creation Stone. But how? Other than sparking fury, what did attacking a town of humans get Arden? Kye was trying his hardest to put the pieces together, but honestly, he was too tired to think right now. He hoped Arden would find out more during his investigation. For now, it was time to sleep. Kye stood up from the kitchen table to head to his room and instantly felt the whole room shift. The sensation was so halting, he had to grab the edge of the table to steady himself. As he tried to focus on the room around him, his eyesight blurred. His legs were unsteady, and his fingertips felt numb. Kye immediately sat back down to keep from falling. Was it exhaustion? He had felt tired, but not to this extent. It was as though he had downed an entire bottle of fire whiskey instead of just a cup of tea. Kye felt his pulse quicken as he slowly focused on the empty cup of tea lying on its side on the table. The tea. The realization dawned on him too late that the tea might not have come from Celeste. Kye saw his amulet still lying on the armoire just 20 feet in front of him. He once again tried to stand up. He had to call Maureen. Whatever this was, she would know what to do. But his mind was too muddled to travel. Every step was a fight. His vision was blurring, and his legs had gone completely numb. When his right leg finally gave out, Kye hit the floor. The common room was dimming, his consciousness fading. The last thought crossing his mind before darkness welcomed him was that Saiyah had been right. He was a fool, and a careless one at that.